listening to 96.9 WHYR-LP, Baton Rouge Community Radio.
Baton Rouge Community Radio is available online at WHYR.org.
When you visit a shop you hear about on WHYR, please tell their staff how much you appreciate their support. Their underwriting helps keep WHYR on the air, and so does your membership. Thank you.
This is WHYR 96.9 FM Baton Rouge Community Radio. I'm Gary So stay tuned. We've got a lot of sports news for you today. This is 96.9 WHYR Baton Rouge Community Radio. Good morning to you, and we'll be back just after this.
Don't ask me, I'm just so fresh and so clean. You think I'm so sexy? I'm just so fresh and so clean. Ain't nobody don't ask me, I'm just so fresh and so clean. I love when you stare at me, I'm just so fresh and so clean. Canary yellow, 7 eyes, the business on display. My nigga Bongo hooked it up on my go. Did my real today so they can.
All right, let's get into the sports news. We're going to start off with one of the biggest games of the year. In Gonzales last night, the rivalry between the East Ascension Spartans and the Santa Mar Gators. And East Ascension squeaked out a thrilling victory over Santa Mar, 21-19. Chad Hill scored all 3 touchdowns for the East Ascension Spartans. They're now 8-1 overall. They're 3-1 in District 5-5A. Santa Mar drops to 2-2 in the district, 6-3 overall. East Ascension's victory sets up a pivotal game in the district next week in Gonzales. Catholic High, who put a whooping on Woodlawn last night, 64-24. That game was at Woodlawn. Catholic High will now travel to East Ascension next week to take on the East Ascension Spartans to see who is going to be the District 5-5A district champions. Woodlawn drops to 2-2 in the district, where Catholic High has 1 loss, and them and East Ascension both have 1 loss, and that's going to be a very good football game down in Gonzales next week. The East Ascension Spartans are back, and it's been a long time coming. I believe I mentioned on the show before, when I first got to Baton Rouge back in the early 80s, East Ascension was a very dominant football team, but for the past 5 to 10 years, they've been mediocre. This year, they've returned to dominance, even after losing Sion Pelehi, a phenomenal running back, a 2014 LSU committee. He's going to be in the purple and gold next year. He tore his ligaments in his knee around game 6, maybe 5. But that hasn't stopped the Spartans at all. They've continued to roll. So, East Ascension, great job, good year. That's going to be a great contest next week between the Catholic High Bears and the East Ascension Spartans, both teams with 1 loss and playing for the 5-5A district championship. Now, there is one other team in 5-5A that has 1 loss, and they traveled to South Baton Rouge last night, and they took on the McKinley Panthers. I've got to put you on I've got to take a phone call for a moment because that's our coaching interview calling right now. You may be able to hear the lines. So let me answer that, and we're going to go to some music. Hold on one second, Coach. I'll be with you in a moment. And we're going to go to some music, and we've got Coach Johnny Duncan, the head football coach of the Istrouma Indians, on the line. And we've got some very interesting things to talk about Istrouma. Those guys with the Capitol Hive, I believe that's the plan, but maybe Coach Duncan can give us a little bit more insight on that in just a minute. So until we get there, all right, we're back. And we've got Coach Johnny Duncan, the head coach of the Istrouma Indians, on the line. Istrouma had a loss last night. The final score was what, Coach? 49-20 last night. They played a 5-5A team in Live Oak. Not a 5-5A team, but a 5A team in Live Oak last night. That makes the Istrouma Indians 1-8 on the season. And Coach Johnny Duncan's a friend of mine, and I wanted to give him a chance to explain and inform the community on what's going on over at Istrouma High. Let's first start off, Coach, with explain to the people how you became the head football coach of the Istrouma Indians.
Kids and developed a real relationship with them, so I didn't want a brand new face coming in, changing a lot of the things that we already established.
Okay, so that's got to be a real tough situation, taking on over a football team in week 3. For those of you out there that aren't quite familiar with the football structure and the high school football structure in Louisiana, football is now a year-round deal. As soon as these guys finish next week, those that are not going into the playoffs, they'll take about a week, maybe 2 off and hit the weights, start their off-season conditioning program. Coach Duncan didn't have a chance to do that with his team, and consequently, they've had a very tough year. So let's get into, Coach, a little bit about what the future plans are for Istrouma High. If you could elaborate on that a little while for us.
Well, as far as I know, at this point, the school is still on schedule to shut down in May. They're going to merge with Capitol High, and all the students that's at Istrouma have a seat in Capitol High's facility. So, but it's the choice of the student whether they want to go or go to another school.
Wow, so the athletes will be instantly eligible if they decide not to go to Capitol, if they decide to go to any other school in the district or anywhere in the state. Will they be instantly eligible, or do you know?
From my knowledge is they are eligible because the school is shutting down.
Okay. So what about the staff? Teachers, coaches, what are the plans for those guys? Or do you know?
The staff will be eligible for interviewing for positions at the schools at Capitol. It depends on the qualifications and what the school actually needs in order to make a determination of if the teachers will be hired or not. So it's going to be another process of interviewing for a job and, getting picked to teach there.
Okay, so Capitol is still RSD as well, correct?
After this, they're being taken over by a charter, another independent charter.
Ah, okay. So they're going to they will be under the direction of an independent charter.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now it's starting to make a little sense to me. Is there anything that can be done to save Istrouma High School, Coach Duncan?
Now that's something that I'm not clear on at this point.
Okay.
We were pondering, and we didn't want the school to close, but RSD is a temporary entity, so they only there for a short period of time. Then they find another program to take over the school.
Let me do this real quick. Let me bring up to speed our listeners that aren't familiar with the term RSD. In Louisiana, RSD is an acronym for the Recovery School District, and schools are placed into the Recovery School District once they have been determined inadequate academically. Academically, the state comes in, takes them over in the Recovery School District, and try to get them back on track academically. In this process, it seems like the state is giving up on Istrouma High School, which has a rich history, one of the first high schools in Baton Rouge, in the state of Louisiana, actually, and now it is set to close. 2014, May, will be the last time, according to the current plans, for someone to walk through the halls of Istrouma High School. So, just wanted to bring them all up to speed there. Anything further to add, Coach Duncan?
Well, the school is just going to close down for one calendar year. It will reopen in 2015, but they're only going to start with a 9th grade class.
Oh, okay. So when it opens back up, will it be under EBR again?
Not that. I'm not clear on either, but I know that the word was they were going to reopen 9th grade, and they were going to add each year 10th, 11th, 12th. And that way,
okay.
So we will reopen.
Okay, under the name Istrouma High.
That's another thing that's not clear. We don't know if it's going to be Istrouma or they're going to change the name.
Okay.
So a lot of that is still kind of foggy right now, but all I know is it will reopen.
Okay. And for those of you, once again, EBR, East Baton Rouge Parish School District. So, who do you have next week, Coach? Let's talk a little bit more football real quick.
We have East Louisiana.
Oh! I was going to try to, I was going to wish you some luck and so try to give you words of inspiration, but East Feliciana is a tall task there, Coach.
Yeah, but, Coach, my boys are playing probably their best football. You know, the scores last night didn't tell what happened on the field, and a lot of mental errors, but throughout all of the adversity that we went through, we still, before the game last night, we was ranked number 30, and they take 32 to the playoffs.
All right.
Every team that's underneath us lost, but we were the only team to play a 5A team and score 20 points on a 5A team, which is going to give us more power points going into next week's game.
Right, correct. Do you know Live Oak's record, Coach?
Live Oak record 4-4 right now. I think either 4-5 or 5-4. I'm not for certain.
Okay, let me bring the listeners up to speed real quick on the power points. When you play up, you receive power points for the team that you're playing. You get points for each victory that team has. Is that correct, Coach?
That's correct.
Okay, so you played up three levels of football or two? Three, because they're 5A and you're a 2A school. Okay. Eric Hatfield has a question for you, Coach.
Coach Eric Hatfield, how are you doing this morning?
Very good.
Just wanted to also get some updates. How's Johnny Jr. doing, and what's his role in the team, and what classification is he now?
He's a junior. He's tailback and linebacker. And he had one hell of a game last night.
It's a very proud papa there. Johnny Duncan Jr. is Coach Duncan's son. Very good athlete. Had a couple of years, had a season at Madison Prep, and is now playing under his pop at Istrouma.
Give us some statistics real quick, Coach, then we're going to let you go. What did he do last night?
Last night he probably had about 8 rushes for 57 yards, 7 tackles, 2 for losses. So he had a pretty solid game. A lot of big hits. So I was, as a proud papa, I was really proud.
I know you were. Well, team, man, I really appreciate you. I know I called you at the last minute. I appreciate you taking the time out on your schedule to join our listeners this morning. And good luck to the Istrouma Indians and to you as well in your professional career. And good luck to little Johnny Duncan. We know that he'll be playing Division I college football sometime in the near future.
Okay, thank you for having me, Coach.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Eric Hatfield here, joining Coach Perry Daniels in the building. We're going to talk about, going to wrap up our high school sports very shortly, but we would be remiss if we did not discuss a couple of hot topics. That District 5-5A, probably I would say the toughest district in the city of Baton Rouge, in my opinion.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Big game last night. We had Louisiana All-AmericanSports.com brought you the Dutchtown Griffins at the McKinley Panthers live from McKinley Stadium. McKinley, we've covered a few games for McKinley this year. They've had a rough go of it. They're riding a 5-game losing streak. I personally was of the opinion, I thought that Dutchtown was going to cruise in, and, Griffin is a half lion, half eagle. I thought they were going to chew him up and then pick up the remains and toss him out of the stadium just from some of the tough losses we've seen McKinley endure this year. But, McKinley is a proud school, proud tradition. Very good coach in Coach Robert Signator, and they have athletes on that team. And they gave Coach Benny Saya of Dutchtown, I think, a run for his money that he wasn't expecting last night.
Not at all. I was impressed with how inspired the McKinley Panthers played last night, and extremely impressed with the game plan that the McKinley coaching staff designed for that game.
Absolutely. McKinley, had been really had given up a lot of points. They had kind of I guess, high school's version of a no-huddle offense, and the result was a lot of plays in the game, which, of course, gave their opponents a lot of opportunities to score points. And they turned it down. Their strongest weapon is running back Tyrone Scott. They kept the ball on the ground. They controlled the ball. They controlled the game. And, while Dutchtown, of course, did come away with the win. If you open the papers this morning, they were put in for a fight of their life. The game was tied at halftime, and McKinley actually enjoyed a brief lead in the second half. Here's that coverage from Louisiana All-AmericanSports.com.
Control of this offense. I formation again. Flea flicker. And he's wide open. And touchdown, McKinley. Alexander the Kegler for 51 yards. The McKinley staff 51 yards came out very aggressive on the very first play of the second half.
In the background, that was McKinley High School public address announcer Michael Roberts.
High energy, Michael.
Oh wow, yeah. If you ever hear any of our broadcasts from McKinley, we've done about 4 games this year. He is very spirited. I'm assuming he's an alum.
No, I don't believe so. Remember last year he was over at Istrouma.
Sure enough,
doing their games, and I think this year he came on Shelby. They had the banner for him last night.
I saw F. Was it F? I don't want to butcher the name, but I saw it.
Right, who was recently gunned down here in Baton Rouge. He was the commentator for years past. He was the PA announcer in years past.
Oh, that's right. I did not know all that. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, they got a good replacement in Michael Roberts. He's got a high energy guy, gets the crowd fired up. So that flea flicker, McKinley ran the ball in the first half. I didn't see it coming. I'm sure Coach Say didn't see it coming, nor did the Dutchtown defense. When they handed it off to Scott, they keyed in. He tossed it back to the QB. They finally took the lead. The extra point failed. That would prove to be pivotal near the end of the game. Dutchtown, though, like I said, they have they have 2 losses in district.
No, they only have one. So actually, they could get a share of the district title depending on who wins next week's game, East Ascension or Catholic High. And I've got to figure out who beat who in that situation.
That's a pretzel right there.
Yeah, because I think East Ascension may have lost to Dutchtown, and Dutchtown lost to Catholic High. Wow. So, it's all up in there.
It's a snarled mess is what it is. But Dutchtown, I believe it makes them 7-1, if I remember correctly. 8-1. Okay, yes. Got that. Sorry about that, Coach Say, if you're listening. So Dutchtown is there for a reason, because they're very, very good, and they've hammered some. They outlasted East Ascension in that marathon last week, 7-6. This is a team you just don't expect to go away quietly. So Dutchtown had a sustained drive. Moved it down the field. They scored a touchdown on a very long, time-consuming drive. Then in the fourth quarter, got the ball back, and they were at about the 31-yard line with a 1-point lead. And then here's the play that pretty much put them in the driver's seat for the remainder of the game. pivots, shotgun, steps, rolls to his right. He's under pressure. He evades the sack, goes long to the end zone. What a catch! And that's another beautiful catch by number 80, Cameron Joshua. That's a touchdown for the Griffins. Cameron Joshua with a 31-yard reception from Brant Fritsch. I'll tell you what, I was really impressed last night with watching Fritsch and Joshua. Fritsch threw the ball with a lot of zip. He had excellent downfield vision, and Cameron Joshua just made these catches. I mean, these rockets right on the sideline. Again, I don't know his scouting status, but somebody's got to be looking at him when you can catch passes like that with regularity.
Man, those were unbelievable catches that young man made, and the quarterback positioned the ball pretty well to where only he could catch.
Exactly.
and at times, I didn't think he was going to catch it.
Right. Oh, I didn't. I mean, so clearly you see the chemistry there, and you got to have some excellent hands to pull that off.
Right.
That game made the score 21-13. McKinley did get one last chance in the final minutes of the game to make something of it, and that was when the drama took place as McKinley got into the end zone. They needed a 2-point conversion to tie. Here we go. Here we go. Bunch formation, Tyrone Scott. Touchdown! On 4th and goal at the 1 with 40 seconds remaining. Let's cut the lead down to 2. With a chance to convert for the 2-point conversion. Formation. Alexander is all by himself. And he snaps it. So he rolled around the left side. And he hurt his knee. And he was hammered at the 1. He's still on the ground. That's a tough break. I thought he had a shot, but those Dutchtown Griffin defenders closed down like vacuum speed.
I didn't see the receiver down here who was covered, had a couple of defenders on him, and that left them able to make the play because he rolled to the one receiver side. I couldn't see him. They were obstructed from my view. I thought he was going to walk into the end zone.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he did not. I thought he was going to walk in the end zone myself. He didn't. The onside kick failed, and the game was over. There are a few moral victories in sports, but I always say at the high school level with kids, there are always teachable moments. And that McKinley, for those of you that maybe haven't followed too much of McKinley and maybe follow other 5-5-8 teams, they're at the bottom of the district. They've gotten really hit hard. Central, Santa Ma, they've gotten nipped by Scotlandville. That was an out-of-district game. They've had some tough losses. They had a moral victory last night.
They did, and it's an extremely tough district. We've already talked about it, so that's going to be actually a really good game with them next week against the Woodlawn Panthers. Right,
I think that's a comparable. First, you got a couple of cats, a couple of Panthers taking on each other, but also you're going to have. I think you have comparable teams. Woodlawn, I don't know their record off the top of my head. I know it's better than McKinley's, but I think they're comparable as far as talent.
They are. Woodlawn actually pulled off the upset last week against Santa Ma.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. They beat Santa Ma last week for their only district win, though. So they've got one district win, and McKinley doesn't have any. So that should be a really nice battle. But just to bring some clarity to the top of the district, Catholic High beat Dutchtown.
Right.
Dutchtown beat East Ascension.
Right.
Okay, so and East Ascension.
They lost to.
They lost to Dutchtown.
So I just tied myself up in. Yeah.
So those are the two one-loss teams. Catholic High lost to Santa Ma.
Right, that's right. That is a snarled mess.
Right.
at that. But that's what makes it exciting and makes it fun for everybody.
That's right. It's a great race.
So before we move on to the college game here on Louisiana All-American Sports, I did want to talk briefly about. A little controversy that we have in the world of high school sports, and also a little controversy in college sports, which we'll get to very shortly. You all remember the Spygate case involving the New England Patriots back in 2009. Eric Mangini, coach of the Jets, who used to be on Coach Bill Belichick's staff, busted the Patriots taking game film of divisional opponents' defensive signals. Well, that apparently, if you want to get to the pros, sometimes you have to play like a pro. But I think the Destrehan football staff might have taken that a little too seriously as they were busted hacking into the computers of South Lafourche. Yeah, I don't think that's really the way you want to emulate the pros. They went to, there was a internet system that contained some South Lafourche game film and data. Somehow the codes were leaked. I'm a little fuzzy on the details. Perry, do you want to chime in?
Well, there's a huddle system that most high school teams around the country now use, and that is a way where they can upload the highlights of the game. Used to be, Eric, that high school coaches on Saturday morning, part of their routine was to drive and meet next week's coach somewhere to trade film. Well, this new huddle system eliminates that. They no longer have to meet up with the opposing coach. Everything's uploaded on the system. They give the other team their code to pull it down, and there it is. And they can make accessible any game that they want to make accessible.
Oh, I see. But what's top secret is supposed to remain top secret.
Correct.
That's
correct.
Okay, shame on them. So those 5 coaches were suspended. First of all, they had to forfeit what was a pretty big win over South Lafourche. So last night they played. You're thinking, well, maybe they're down a little bit, and maybe maybe they had would be out of sorts. Well, I'll tell you, Destrehan's always had a strong football team, and you could, one thing.
They won last night.
Yeah, for 1 week, I think the coaching lessons could stick with their players as they played HL Bourgeois last night. I'm thinking if I'm the Bourgeois coaching staff, here's an opportunity to really sneak in a sucker punch with an opponent at their weakest. Well, no. Was not to happen. Final score, whoopsie daisy, enough of Roger. Final score was 63-8, a 55-point hammering of HL Bourgeois. So, it tells us a couple of things. Number one, good coaching lessons filtered down, but more importantly, you didn't have to cheat. You're obviously pretty good.
Exactly. And
you're pretty good.
Here are my thoughts regarding this whole situation, Eric. That, kids look up to coaches.
Right.
They look up to coaches. Sometimes the coach is a surrogate dad.
Right.
To a lot of kids.
Always a mentorship role.
Always. So to do something as nefarious as this, to go in and hack someone else's system in an effort to win, what is it exactly that you are teaching?
Right.
So I think that these coaches should probably be forced to sit out at least a year from coaching because that hurts their wallets.
Yeah.
That hurts their wallets. There's a stipend associated with coaching. You get an additional percentage to your teaching salary. Now, I don't think they should be fired. They might be great teachers in the classroom.
Right. And everyone makes mistakes.
Everyone makes mistakes.
And obviously they're good because Destrehan's really good.
Well, I don't know now because sometimes, you can have good football teams without good coaching.
Well, that's true.
So, you could have just good athletes.
Right.
So that doesn't necessarily mean that they're good coaches. However, you don't want to take that away from them in its entirety.
Right.
But there should be some penalty so that the kids can learn a lesson.
Right. I agree. You break the rules. You don't do the crime if you can't do the time.
Exactly.
So I just found that to be a compelling story. We're going to transition from high school to college, but we're going to stick with the subject of scandals. Some of you may have heard in the news about some coaching changes at Florida Atlantic University. And, it's funny how life and sport often interact with one another. As, what can I say? We go to college. There's a time and a place for everything, and it's called college. Of course, the states of Colorado and Washington have legalized the hippie lettuce.
Yes.
And it has not quite been legalized in Florida, though, and it's certainly frowned upon in amateur athletics. Now, you know that college students are going to be college students. Let's just keep it as it is. Call it what it is. And, college students are going to chief the hay. But you're talking about coaches being role models. I don't think the coaches are supposed to be setting that kind of example for the students. And pretty much what happened down there at Florida Atlantic was that Coach Pelini, honestly, he's related to former LSU assistant Bo Pelini. I'm going to probably
current Nebraska head football coach.
correct. I want to say his name is Carl Pelini, but I might bungle that. I don't follow a lot of FAU sports, but he and one of his assistants were allegedly seen at a party grinding the old hippie lettuce there and puffing the Magic Dragon, and apparently got back to the athletic director, and they were fired. Now, I had some I kind of wonder, look, I know you're not supposed to do certain things, but this is 2013. There are 2 states in which pot is perfectly legal. The federal government isn't even running stings anymore. All right, I mean, speeding tickets could be more, a DUI is more detrimental than a pot bust nowadays. So that leads me to think that might have been just the straw that broke the camel's back to give them the impetus to can these guys. Florida Atlantic has gotten beaten up on by a lot of teams this year. I briefly looked at their schedule. It's a smaller school, more academic than athletic. So I can only think that if perhaps they were not performing. Florida Atlantic, if I remember, was it Florida Atlantic or Florida International that hired Isaiah Thomas?
International.
It was okay. But if Florida Atlantic is one of those schools where, it might have been time for a coaching change. This may have been the straw that broke the camel's back.
Eric, this is a touchy subject here. The school has a right to hire people that meet its image.
Absolutely.
If this act did not reflect well on the image of the school, then I totally comprehend it from the administration standpoint.
Right, absolutely.
Totally. Now, America, listen up, silly mortals. We have to get beyond this hypocrisy of this drug law that we have against marijuana.
Right.
We've got to get beyond that. It is proven over and over again in different studies that alcohol is way more damaging.
Oh, yeah, I can attest to that.
It's way more damaging. So, hopefully, America's changing. I see the evolution happening before our eyes.
Right. Well, we have 3 straight guys in the White House who cheat some hay there,
Right.
So, I mean, come on.
You've got 2 where recreational marijuana is legal, 2 states where recreational marijuana is legal, several other states where medicinal marijuana
and they kind of turn their backs on minor. Like California pretty much turns its back on a minor bust.
Right.
Unless they're looking for a reason to put a bad guy in jail.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I just think we've got to get beyond that as a society and handle that situation a little bit more maturely.
And I personally would like the opportunity to get to inhale. So, yeah, what can I say? That's a tough break there. Moving on to the world of college football, our Tigers and our Jaguars are idle this week.
Actually, I don't know how this slipped by me, but Southern University played last night in Houston.
They took on Texas State, did they not? Folks, let me just give
Texas Southern.
Texas Southern, sorry about that. Let me just give my background really quick, folks. I'm an LSU alum. I know that Southern football is important to the community. I try to keep up, but, I kind of bleed purple and gold and wear purple and gold shades. Perry has degrees from both institutions, so he has to regulate me sometimes when I get caught slipping on Southern. I looked at the Saturday schedule. There was no game because it was played on Friday. So
Right.
Actually, I read in the newspaper yesterday that they were going to play TSU. Perry, you want to give the folks an update on that?
Well, it looks like Southern has broken their losing streak in the city of Houston. They had lost 5 straight games in the city of Houston. This time they go down last night to take on, maybe they need to play all their games on Fridays in Houston. They go down to Houston to take on Texas Southern. They come out with the victory, 31-24. The Jags are now 5-4 on the year, 5-2 in the Southwestern Conference. More importantly, they are sitting atop of the SWAC Western Division with 1 more SWAC game left to play, 2 more left to play against the bottom teams. The bottom team in the West will be in the Bayou Classic. That's the Grambling State Tigers. The bottom team in the east of the SWAC is Alabama State, and that's who the Southern University Jaguars take on next week, Alabama State, and that'll be in Alabama, I believe.
Right.
So it's almost a lock, Eric,
that Southern's going to have a rematch against the Jackson State Tigers for the SWAC championship.
That's going to be epic. I think Southern University fans, they've been long suffering. By the way, if you want to get on this conversation, 343-9927, area code 225. That's 343-9927 to talk to us here at Louisiana All-American Sports. But the Southern fans have been long suffering. It's been a while. They've had the whole fiasco with Stump Mitchell. Dawson Odoms has been his breath of fresh air, really. You see what he's got with that team.
Most definitely.
So I'm very excited for the Jaguar Nation and looking forward to seeing what they can bring to JSU.
Now, let me say this, though. We're not back in Houston yet, which is where the SWAC championship will be played. You know, no matter what the records are, we know that Thanksgiving weekend game in New Orleans,
right,
anything could happen.
That Bayou. Well, you saw me. Grambling they went to overtime and they lost against a much better opponent. It's slipping away, but that was after the game they forfeited to Jackson State. They played, I want to say it was Alcorn, or maybe it was
Southern played Alcorn last week, so
it was. I'm sorry, maybe it was Prairie View. Somebody of a quality team, a SWAC team you expected to win, and
Prairie View.
It was Prairie View. Okay, Prairie View. They took them to overtime. So this is a Grambling team that was, hasn't won all year, and all kinds of turmoil, and they must have rallied around being back on the field because they played tough. And let me tell you, with that Southern Grambling game, you could throw the records out of the window. Now, all that being said, I just think that the Jaguars are too good this year, and I think they're going to. Really bring. I think they're gonna win that Bayou Classic. But like you said, anything can happen. You have emotions flowing. Grambling, I think, has an us against the world kind of concept. Or they're rallying around one another clearly as they played Prairie View A&M very tough last week.
Let me make a couple of errors. Let me correct a couple of errors. Alabama State is actually in second place in the SWAC East. They have a 6-1 record. But this is why, even if Southern loses that game, they're still one game above Prairie View because Prairie View has a 4-3 record, where Southern has a 5-2 record. So if Southern loses to Alabama State, they'll be tied with 3 losses. But because Southern beat Prairie View here in Baton Rouge earlier in the season, they would win the tiebreaker and be the SWAC Western Conference champions. Also, one other correction. Last week, I reported that Alcorn State was in the running. Alcorn State is actually in the Eastern Division of the SWAC. They are in the running, but it's on the other side of the conference. They have 1 loss as well, as they're tied with Alabama State for second place in that Eastern Conference. So even Jackson State hasn't made their way back to Houston just yet.
Right. Now it's definitely, they cannot count those chickens until they're hatched. So let's move on. LSU idle a day last week. They put an uninspired whooping on a vastly inferior Furman team, as we expected coming off the Ole Miss loss. So moving on to today, we have a big game in college football in Florida. And again, if you want to jump in on that conversation, 225-343-9927, 343-9927. The Miami Hurricanes going down to Tallahassee to take on the Florida State Seminoles. This is the game that, everybody in the ACC has been waiting for. Game of the week today, probably a game of the year in the ACC. Look, we got, Miami is undefeated, but it's kind of a but because they've had some close games against teams that it should not have been that close with, and Florida State is obliterated, folks. So, right now, number 7 Miami against number 3 Florida State. Jameis Winston, 23 touchdowns, 4 interceptions on the year, will be waiting for the Hurricanes. Now, last week, Perry, you said you anticipated a bit of an upset. Are you still feeling good about that?
Actually, no, Eric. I'm a Hurricane fan. I mentioned that last week, and I really like that program there. It's just that I think that team's a little too young,
right,
and inexperienced to go into Tallahassee and play against such a talented Seminole team and come out with a victory.
Right.
So I think it'll be a close game, and I can't believe I'm saying this. And Derek Thomas, I know you're going to remind me of this one day, that I'm actually picking against the Miami Hurricanes. But I really think that Florida State's going to pull out a very close game in Tallahassee. It should be very entertaining.
There's going to be a lot of offense, that's for sure. I mean, you got Jameis Winston, who could just light up the sky. He's a redshirt freshman. He is going to be so good in the NFL if he stays healthy. You know, they have their receiver Rashad Green, which is pretty much his favorite target, who already has almost 40 catches and 8 touchdowns on the season. That is a lot for a college wide receiver. Miami has one big threat, and that's their running back, Duke Johnson. He's bailed them out of a lot of situations late. He's a clutch running back. He already has 823 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's averaging almost 7 yards a carry. It's going to be interesting to watch the way this unfolds, but Miami, I've found, has been susceptible to a lot of inferior passing attacks. You know, you've had the likes of North Carolina, for example, running up 300 yards on them, and I want to say Georgia Tech, but I could be wrong.
If it was Georgia Tech, they just ran the ball.
I'm sorry, so it wasn't Georgia Tech. North Carolina did run up a lot of offense. They've been susceptible to the pass against teams that like to throw the football, and Jameis Winston and the Florida State Seminoles do it about as well as anybody else. So,
what does that mean for national title implications, Eric?
Well,
your thoughts?
I'll tell you. I mean, here's the thing: Alabama runs the table they're in.
Right,
period.
of course.
That leaves us with Oregon and with Florida State. Now, if Florida State wins this game against Miami, you look at the schedule, and, you have to give deference to ACC football with the likes of Clemson and Miami, and even Maryland was ranked for a little while this year, versus the Pac-12, where you have, obviously, Oregon's very good, but USC is as down as they get, Oregon State, terrible, Arizona, blah, mediocre. I mean,
What about Stanford, UCLA?
Stanford and UCLA are quality opponents. You have those two there, but UCLA has proved that they can, they're not quite the prime time. They're not. I don't think they're Clemson yet. I don't think they're Miami yet.
No,
Stanford's very good. But then there's the Pac-12 championship. If you're gonna have a real snarl mess, and the prima facie case for why we'll have the new system coming in next year that'll have a 4-team playoff, should those teams remain unbeaten, because someone's got to go. But I think right now the BCS formula, I would imagine, would favor Florida State a little bit right now because of who they play, the way that they're winning, and the teams that they're playing against.
Do we happen to know who they would play in the ACC championship?
Well, that's one of those snarled messes that we're talking about. I want to guess. Perhaps Virginia Tech. Those divisions are not as in the ACC. Those divisions are just geographically thrown up in the air. Yes, I just from memory, I want to say Va-Tech might be the other school, which would be one-sided, but I'm not sure.
Right.
So anyway, that's a big game coming today. We're going to move on to the NFL in a little bit. Not a whole lot to pick from this week in the National Football League. We have our beloved New Orleans Saints going on to play the New York Jets. We're talking a lot about how the Jets were kind of resurgent. They went to Paul Brown Stadium to play Cincinnati. We thought that Rex Ryan might have had a chance to snack on the Bengals, but didn't really work out so well for the Green Machine, for Gang Green. Sorry about that. As they went there and got smashed 49-9. The Saints will go to the Meadowlands to face the Jets. The Saints shredded the Buffalo Bills last week. They're going to have, I think, Perry, a tougher time on offense because the Jets have a quality pass defense, very stingy run defense, and the Saints have not run the ball that well. But that Jets team just does not have an offensive identity. I mean, when Bilal Powell and Chris Ivory start running the ball, they can put up some yards, but they just have not been able to establish any kind of passing. They have no real high-quality receiving talent on that team. I think that the Saints are probably going to go there. It might not be the blowout that we're hoping for because Rex Ryan's defense, although Cincinnati ran up 49 points on them last week, but I can't see that lightning striking twice. But I think the Saints are going to get a win at New York.
I think the Saints will get a win in New York as well. The Jets, they play up and down. They're not consistent, and that's characteristic of a very young team, which they are.
Right, with a rookie quarterback.
With a rookie quarterback, which they are. I think without a significant letdown from the Saints.
Right. From the win over the Bills, and that was kind of clunky too. And there were Sean Payton himself said right afterwards there were corrections that need to be made. The Saints scored 35-17. So we see where his mind is. He's like, in spite of the win, this has got to get better. They're going to bring it to New York, especially going on the road.
To New York, and they're going to perform well there. And I suspect that Sean Payton is going to use this as a rehearsal for a trip to New York come February for the Saints.
Well, assuming the Saints can beat the Seahawks and hopefully they can get home field because as we know the Saints historically and hysterically on the road are a completely different team in postseason. But if they can get that home field, I think they could be going to New York to go in the bitter cold in February. Let's hope so, Who Dat Nation.
Right.
Real quick, we want to remind you that at 12 o'clock noon, we have Noel Jackson with Music Satisfaction coming up very shortly, so stay tuned. It's an excellent show, folks. Really, very slim pickings on Sunday. The Monday night game could be a very good one, though. We have the Chicago Bears at 4-3 going to Green Bay. The NFL's longest-standing rivalry continues. My thoughts on that is without Jay Cutler, who's still out with a groin injury. The Bears have Brandon Marshall, good receiver, Matt Forte, solid running back. But Green Bay has solved their problems at running back with Eddie Lacy. They really struggled with that the last couple of years, but Eddie Lacy is has gone beast mode. Has gone beast mode when the Packers give him the ball. He already has 446 yards in the season, 4.0 average. I think they found their guy there. And not to mention, we know what Aaron Rodgers can do with Jordy Nelson and that crew when they put the ball up in the air. Yeah, that Green Bay team's a pretty good team. I know they've had some difficulty early on this season. Yeah. Their record right now, Eric, do we know? They are 5-2. 5-2. So they were 2-2 at one point, or 1-2, something like that. So now they're starting to get it together. Yeah. And we've seen Eddie Lacy and know what he can do. Oh, yeah. So Eddie Lacy went to the University of Alabama, of course, and gave Shoe many a headache. And before that? And, of course, he had Mark Ingram before that, who we see who we've seen enough of every week. Who that fans might say we've really seen enough of Mark Ingram every week. What happened to Mark Ingram? Well, he had for this year, he did have an injury he was nursing. He came out, had a couple of decent runs last week, but I think he's not fit. Something as a father, he's not fitting into the system that Sean Payton has. He's not getting the tough yards. We at least expected a power back like Ingram to get the short yards, but he's not quite getting it. I hate to use the B word, but it's starting to look like he's a bust at this point, which is shocking for a former Heisman Trophy winner who ran with tremendous power at Alabama. But I will say this much. I think there could be a system issue. Running backs have got to build a rhythm, and Sean Payton rolls in 3-4 running backs a game, and, he pretty much is a pass-first offense. When he gives you the ball, he expects you to run. Pierre Thomas is great. He can take a handoff with no notice and just, boom, hit it. But Mark Ingram has not gotten that kind of repetition and that kind of rhythm. I think he's with the wrong team. Yeah, and possibly so. But you know what? That's good trade bait. Even though his numbers are down. Right. He doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on him. Correct. Because the Saints have not used him very much. No, they have not. And he might fit in with a ground and pound system. Right. So I don't think he's without value. I just think he's not working for the Saints. Okay. Real quick, we want to talk, since we're giving our projections that we think first of all, I do think Green Bay wins that game. That's the last. So do I. Bears have had a lot of trouble on defense where they've traditionally been strong. They don't have Jay Cutler. That game could get really ugly really fast. But, the Bears are right in, and if they do find a way to eke out a win, maybe find a way to sucker punch Mike McCarthy and surprise them, we'll have another one of those snarl messages we're talking about in the NFC North with the Lions and the Bears and the Packers. So real quick, let's look at, since we're talking about making projections and chances to say I told you so, let's go to our I Told You So segment where we find out where Perry and I were right and Perry and I were wrong from last week. Guys, the Paladins are 3-4, 2-2 in Southern Conference play. I think LSU wins this one. What do you think, 50 points or 60 points, Perry?
I'm not sure. It'll be a sound victory. Let's say 50, just to stay safe. But 50 or 60, put a sound whooping on Furman, and it'll be a 50-point lead. I think they're going to beat Furman like he was Mark Furman. Okay, so I think the Texas Tech meets their Waterloo today. I don't keep on beating Waterloo into the ground. I don't think Mr. Napoleon Spears would appreciate it, but I do think that they're going to get it today against Oklahoma. I think when you have all air and defense optional, eventually that's going to come to get you against a stronger team. Right. We've seen this. I think it's going to be a good game. I think Coach Jim Moore Jr. of the UCLA Bruins has a solid, strong, smart game plan. Very gifted quarterback. But I'm not going to go against Oregon, playing in Eugene, Oregon, until I actually see somebody beat them. I'll believe that when I see it. I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I'm going to go ahead and give that Oregon quarterback the Heisman. I think he is far and away the best college quarterback in the country, even better than the Florida State guy. So anyway, getting back to the action, Saints have Buffalo coming to town. They said 10-point favorite. I think that's probably right. I think the Saints will
probably cover that spread. I certainly think that the Saints are going to win that ball game. They had that tough loss against New England in Foxborough, but, again, like we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, it wasn't like there were any red flags or glaring weaknesses. You just had two great quarterbacks going head-to-head, and Brady at home had just enough. They stay home. The Vegas guys like the fixer. People say that home field's worth 3 points, the Saints would get by 3 points. So I expect the Saints to rebound in their first home game in about a month in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Noel Jackson, music satisfaction. I think the Bengals are going to win that game. A slightly more experienced quarterback and better weapons on the outside, and they're at home. So I think they win that game. They've won 2 in a row, and to borrow a line from Lou in Major League, you win 3 in a row, that's called a winning streak. So, you got Megatron, Calvin Johnson. The Bengals couldn't stop him. I just don't see the Cowboys stopping him. Their secondary has been like Swiss cheese for much of the year. I think Detroit rebounds and the Lions win that game against the visiting Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, so Detroit's a much better team here. They just need to execute what they can do, and they should come out of this game with a victory over the Dallas Cowboys.
So, real quick, we got about 2 minutes left tonight. Clay Buchholz versus Joe Kelly in Game 3. While Clay Buchholz has a smoking hot wife, but yet a horrible perm, that's the lady from Deal or No Deal. I like the Cardinals tonight. I'm not able to trust Clay Buchholz in postseason tonight. Of course, I'm thinking that the Cardinals only win 2 out of 3 in St. Louis. I think you're right. I think it goes back to Boston for a Game 6. Real quick.
So, that's pretty good segue we got there. Perry,
We're going to jump into the World Series. Go
ahead.
Welcome back. It would be remiss of us not to mention being a community radio station, not to mention that Eddie Lacy, the star running back for the Green Bay Packers, is actually from Geismar, Louisiana, is a former Dutchtown Griffin running back. So we just wanted to mention that before we jump into the World Series.
So anyway, that's a perfect segue from the end. Is Clay Buchholz did pitch that Game 3, and he wasn't terrible, but of course there was some controversy at the end of that with the walk-off obstruction call.
Wasn't that amazing?
That was weird. Even Tim McCarver, who's been around since the year of the rat, he said he'd never seen anything like that in his entire life. And St. Louis appeared to be in the driver's seat, and then the Red Sox got sick and tired. Strange ending to Game 4 with the walk-off pickoff. And I'll tell you what else I thought was amusing about that. Or maybe not amusing, but I knew it was inevitable. Colton Wong was the pinch runner who came in to run for Alan Craig, who had the leg problem. And Koji Uehara picked him off at first base. And what happened with Twitter? Oh, it looks like they made the Wong choice. Oh, Wong was Wong. Things ended all Wong for St. Louis. And I'm just like, I knew the horrible puns were going to fill up the Twitter sphere. That really proved to be the turning point in the series, though, as Boston really never looked back after that.
Let me say this. First of all, congratulations to the Red Sox Nation. For any organization to go from worst to first is a tremendous feat.
Kind of a self-inflicted worst with Bobby Valentine, the manager.
Boston's been through some really tough times this year with the bombing on Memorial Day weekend at the Marathon.
Right.
So it's good for them to enjoy this moment, their victory. Hate that it came at the expense of my beloved St. Louis Cardinals. However, it's good to see the Cardinals in the World Series. And Matheny being a second-year coach, this organization having such a plethora of young, talented arms.
Oh, God, Michael Waka. That Michael Waka's a fool. I know he got shelled in Game 6, but boy, he had what a postseason that young man had.
Exactly, Eric. And these Cardinals, first let me say, I think that getting to the World Series is one of the most difficult things to accomplish in sports.
I agree. You have to go through a grueling regular season, and you have to manage, when you're in contention, you have to manage your regular season for the playoffs, and then you have 162 games. You start off, first of all, if you're a wild card team, it comes down to one game.
Right.
And then the divisional round, it's a best of 5, so you only have 3 strikes.
Right.
No pun intended, just to get to the league championship series. So I agree, very tough.
So So I'm trying to let the Cardinal Nation know that, one, you still have a whole lot to be proud of. Two, if they don't make it back there next year, it doesn't mean that they're a bad team. It's just extremely difficult.
I'll tell you, I think that team is built to last for several years. They will be right there, probably right there with the LA Dodgers.
Or the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Or the Pittsburgh Pirates in the National League, right. So great season in baseball, a lot of great stories, looking forward to next year. Just want to remind everybody really quick that the National Basketball Association is back in business, and we've had some treats really in the first couple of days of the season.
Pelicans!
Oh, the Pelicans are playing some strong basketball. You know, they played Indiana really tough, didn't quite work out. Played some tough ball. What was the result last night, or do you know, last night's game with the Pelicans?
They lost.
They did lose last night, but I'll tell you what, that trio of Anthony Davis and Eric Gordon, right? They're looking real sharp. And Drew Holiday might be the straw that stirs the drink down there in New Orleans for the Pelicans. Miami Heat off to a 1-2 start. Shockingly, they were nipped. They were down 10 points with a minute to go against the Brooklyn Nets, and they lost by 1. So there's going to be some good basketball going on this year. We are out of time. That's all we have for this week. We'd like to thank you for joining us on Louisiana All-American Sports. It's so fresh and so clean. We'd like to thank you for joining us on Louisiana All-American Sports. Stay tuned at 12 noon for Noel Jackson. Music Satisfaction coming up on 96.9 WHYR-LP Baton Rouge. And as we always say around this time, have a good afternoon.
How are you?